Divorcing you was definitely the right decision. You and your kid are still as pathetic as ever. I make $200,000 a year now, you know.
It seems my ex-husband, Chris, just wanted to brag about himself. He didn't even try to ask how we've been doing.
Oh, by the way, I should introduce you to someone. Hey, come here. This is my current wife, Emily.
He introduced his new spouse to me. I don't understand why he can do such things. Oh, is that so? Are we done here? Bye, then.
Wait a minute.
As I tried to leave, Chris blocked my path again.
What? Jealous because we look happy? Just because you're poor doesn't mean you have to be so twisted. You'll end up even more miserable.
He assumed I was unhappy, which was infuriating and almost nauseating. As I remained silent, he was about to say something more, but my son Mike interrupted.
Mom, why don't you just fire this guy?
Huh?
My name is Jessica. I'm now 42 years old. I married my coworker, Chris, when I was 26. I continued working after our marriage, but left my job when I got pregnant. Then our son Mike was born. Now that he's 7 and in elementary school, things have settled down a bit. I was thinking about going back to work and discussed it with Chris. He agreed immediately. I know he was thinking about our finances, but he seemed a bit too eager for me to find a job.
Have you found one yet? No. Are you searching properly? Any job would do.
He really wanted me to work, even when I was looking for part-time work.
Why not work full-time? It's okay if it's not 5 days a week. Maybe 3 days, 8 hours each.
He suggested, working too much might take me out of your health insurance coverage. Mike doesn't need constant care, but he still gets home early from school. But Chris suggested after-school programs, insisting full-time work would be better. He really wanted me to work long hours. I was the one who wanted to work, but I hadn't worked in years and felt anxious. Even if I ultimately work full-time, I want to ease into it gradually. I didn't want to start full-time and then quit if it was too much. For now, I decided to work part-time, about 20 hours a week, planning to switch to full-time later. Chris reluctantly agreed, hoping I'd start full-time sooner if I could handle it. I never thought he'd be so concerned about our finances. Honestly, I was both annoyed and pleased with Chris interfering in my job search. After all, it's better to have a husband who cares about our finances than one who's indifferent. But I would soon realize I was wrong in this perception. A few months after I started my part-time job, I received a message on my phone. When I checked the message, a very familiar name caught my eye. It was from an old coworker, who also happens to be Chris' current colleague. Surprised to hear from an old coworker after such a long time, I casually read the message. But what it said shocked me so much, I couldn't help but exclaim out loud. "What? Are you serious?"
Long time no see. I saw Chris recently, and he seemed really close with some women. Thought he might be cheating, so I decided to message you.
The message was informing me about Chris's affair. With a photo, my heart sank. The man in the photo was obviously Chris, and he was arm in arm with a woman I didn't know. Of course, even if I had known her, that wouldn't make it okay. More messages followed as I grappled with the shock.
That woman is actually the daughter of our division head. She works at our company too, so she definitely knows Chris is married. It's so brazen, right? I wonder if that's just how things are with young people these days.
While she seemed to be enjoying the gossip, I replied with a thank you and closed the messaging app. I never thought Chris would cheat, but now that I think about it, there were signs. Maybe he pushed me to work because it gave him more time for his affair. He was supposedly on an overnight business trip today, which is probably another lie to spend time with his mistress. When he came home the next day, I confronted him right away. I knew I should play it cool and gather evidence if we were heading for a divorce, but I just couldn't pretend everything was fine. "What's this all about?" I showed him the photo. He was momentarily surprised, but quickly became defiant.
So you know. Well, it can't be helped. It's exactly what it looks like.
Honestly, I was expecting some sort of excuse, so his response took me aback.
The other woman is the division head's daughter. He's pretty much guaranteed a higher position in the future. You get what I'm saying, right? It's better for me to marry her. She's younger and prettier than you.
He looked at me with such disdain. I had thought about staying in the marriage for our son Mike's sake, even if it meant swallowing my tears. But his attitude was too much. He showed no remorse for his affair. In fact, he blatantly compared me to his mistress, saying she was better. I was so disappointed in him. As I stayed silent, he got even bolder.
Well, that's the situation. I'm thinking about divorce. It's a bit sooner than I planned, but I was going to bring it up eventually. Works out, I guess.
And that's how we ended up divorcing. After being insulted like that, I couldn't bear the thought of staying married to him. I decided it'd be much better to just get the alimony and leave. He paid what I asked for and gave me almost all of his assets. Naturally, I got custody of Mike. He probably thought giving me some money was nothing, considering he was about to marry into wealth. As he left our home for the last time.
Well, good luck with your pool life. Raising a kid alone, you'll never be well off. I'm joining the ranks of the wealthy. The division head's family is rich, you know. We'll probably never meet again, but enjoy struggling at the bottom.
He left with such a parting shot. I couldn't believe he could say such things about his own child. I was relieved to be rid of such a man. Though I felt mentally liberated, everyday life was tough. The alimony and assets helped, but I didn't have much savings, so I needed to work hard. Part-time work wasn't enough to live on. I ended up changing work from part-time to full-time. Mike had to go to after-school programs once elementary school ended. Unexpectedly, I ended up working full-time, and it became quite challenging both physically and mentally. Working full-time and handling all the household chores all by myself was a big change in my life. Time flew by as I was too busy to notice. Before I knew it, 7 years had passed since the divorce. But you get used to things. Mike is now in middle school and can mostly take care of himself. He's grown into a solid kid, probably more responsible than most boys his age because I was always busy. Mike even helps with cooking and laundry now. Thanks to him, I've been freed from the burdens of both housework and childcare, and I've had time for myself for a few years now. Both my work and my personal life are going great. Now I'm 100% sure. I definitely did the right thing by divorcing that awful man. If I had continued to be married to him, I would never have achieved this life. However, one day, while Mike and I were shopping at a local mall, we unexpectedly ran into that terrible person. My ex-husband, Chris. I didn't notice him, but he approached us.
Hey, isn't that Jessica? Long time no see. You've aged quite a bit.
Is that what you say to someone you haven't seen in a while? A person with normal sensibilities would never comment on a woman's age. That one remark showed me that Chris hadn't grown at all as a person. I was instantly annoyed and responded curtly. What? You've aged even more. I barely recognized you. Honestly, he really had aged a lot. It had been 7 years since I'd last seen him, but he seemed to have aged twice as much. His hair was thinning, and his belly protruded, a typical middle-aged man's body. Realizing that talking to Chris was a waste of time, I said, well, long time no see. But we don't have anything to discuss, do we? So, goodbye. And tried to walk away. But he wouldn't let it go that easily. He blocked my path and started talking nonsense.
Come on, don't be like that. The family's all here. Let's catch up.
I had no interest in hearing about his life. The only thing I wanted to say was about the child support payments he stopped making a few years after our divorce. Child support is not a right for me, but for Mike. I was irritated that he could talk so boldly in front of Mike. But Chris didn't care about my mood at all. He started talking about his life, which I didn't want to hear.
I got remarried after our divorce. To the division head's daughter in that photo. Oh, he's an executive director now. And they promoted me to division head, too. I'm really winning at life.
Honestly, I couldn't care less about his success. It didn't make me envious at all. If anything, it made me angry that he could advance in his career yet not pay child support. He's winning at life but can't pay a few $100s a month for child support. He's just petty. His bragging continued, rubbing salt in the wound.
I really made the right choice divorcing you. You and Mike still look as pitiful as ever. I make $200,000 a year now.
It seemed like he just wanted to brag. He didn't even ask about our lives. A normal parent would be interested in their child's well-being, but he didn't even talk to Mike. He was right there. What a terrible father.
Oh, right. Let me introduce you to someone. Hey.
He called over to a woman who was looking at clothes nearby. She came over, and I immediately recognized her. It was the woman from the photo. Yes, Chris's new wife.
This is my current wife, Emily. Isn't she much more beautiful than you?
He introduced his new spouse to me. I don't understand why he can do such things. After all, this woman was the one who stole my husband while we were still married. Sure, I'm glad we're divorced now, but it was a shock back then, and I harbored some resentment. There's no way I could have a good impression of her. You'd think even someone as dense as Chris would understand that, but he seems to want to look down on us. He can't even grasp such a simple thing. Is that so? Are we done here? I'm not free to chat. Bye. Wanting to get away from this incredibly unpleasant encounter, I didn't even bother to greet the woman, let alone give her a second glance.
Wait a minute.
As I tried to leave, he stood in my way again. Stop it, There's no point in talking about your family affairs.
Jealous because we seem happy. You shouldn't be so twisted just because you're poor. You'll become even more miserable.
He just assumes I'm unhappy. Mind your own business. I'm perfectly happy, thank you. The biggest misfortune recently was being approached by you. Even when I say I'm happy, he doesn't believe me and pities me.
Well, happiness is subjective, but poverty isn't really happiness, is it? Don't push yourself. A single, divorced mother can't be happy, right? With those conditions, you probably can't remarry. Just so you know, as your ex-husband, I'm worried about you.
His face showed the exact opposite of concern. He was mocking me. The face of his current wife next to him was smirking too. I could never be friends with this kind of woman. Who finds pleasure in belittling others.
See, I told you so. You're much better than her. Have some confidence.
Chris seems to be flattering his current wife, constantly praising her in comparison to me. He said to his current wife, probably sucking up to her since she helped his career. Such a despicable man.
You're really the lowest level of woman. I can't believe you were married to him.
His wife, mocking me despite meeting me for the first time. It's the lowest form of human behavior. I wanted to leave because I might retort if I stayed longer. But I couldn't move as Chris was blocking my way.
Just so you know, we're still very much in love, so there's zero chance of us getting back together. Don't get any strange hopes up.
As if I had any lingering feelings for him. He caused our divorce with his cheating, and now, after 7 years, he thinks I'm still hung up on him. His fantasy world is just too ridiculous. Completely misunderstanding my speechlessness.
Shocked into silence, it's tough being a popular man.
His middle-aged appearance hardly matched his claim of being a popular man. I was past being angry, feeling only disgust. As I stayed silent, he was about to say something more. Mike spoke up.
Mom, why don't you just fire this guy?
What?
Chris was completely baffled by Mike's words. Mike seemed really angry. Calling his own father this guy. Well, that's totally fine with me.
What do you mean, fire? Do you even understand what that means? Your mom can't fire me, you know. You're in middle school, right? You should study more.
Chris, talking down even to Mike. Insulting my beloved son is something I cannot forgive. Just as I was about to explode with anger at Chris, a voice called out to me.
Hey, what's going on here?
A man approached, speaking out loud. Chris's face froze as he saw who it was.
Why are you here? President Brandon?
Chris asked the man.
What do you mean why? I'm just shopping with my family. Are you saying I shouldn't be here?
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it like that. I was just surprised to see you talking to my ex-wife.
Oh, that's natural. She's my current wife, after all.
What? She's your wife. I can't believe it.
The truth is, I remarried with Brandon about 3 years ago, who had lost his former wife. He's the president of Chris's company. We got close when I was just divorced and shopping at a supermarket, where he approached me. I knew Brandon from my time working at the same company as Chris, so we were already acquainted. Brandon knew all about Chris's affair with the division head's daughter, which led to our divorce. And he was bitter about it as a man, However, he obviously couldn't intervene in his employees' private lives. When he saw me at the supermarket, he felt compelled to speak to me. I was surprised he remembered my face and name, as I was just a regular employee. It could be because I worked at the reception.
You seem to have had a tough time with your marriage, but I'm sure you'll find someone better soon.
I'm happy you remember me, Brandon, but don't worry, I'm doing fine. At the time, I was still trying to put on a brave face not long after my divorce. But Brandon, with his extensive life experience, saw through my facade and offered comforting words.
Divorce takes more than 3 times the effort of marriage. Even a smooth divorce is exhausting. I wasn't divorced, but I lost all motivation when my wife passed away. Separation is hard for a couple who once loved each other, so there's no need to pretend you're okay.
Brandon understood the loneliness of a marriage ending. His words resonated with me as I was dealing with a mix of relief and emptiness after my divorce.
Talking to someone like me might help you feel better. Feel free to contact me anytime. I can always treat you to a meal,
He said and gave me his business card. I didn't contact him for about 2 years, thinking it would be too presumptuous. But as time passed and I settled down, I felt the need to talk to someone. Finally, I gathered my courage and contacted Brandon. Despite his busy schedule, he made time for me and treated me to a meal. When I was an employee, Brandon was a division head. He seemed inapproachable as the son of the previous president, but I found him a very friendly man when we had dinner together. Soon, Brandon and I became good drinking buddies, outside of work, of course. After about a year, he proposed to me with a serious expression. "You're kidding, right, Brandon? Don't joke about that." I thought he was joking since we were drinking, but Brandon was serious.
At first, I just wanted to encourage you after your divorce, but being with you really settled me down. I haven't felt this way with anyone except my late wife. Honestly, you've been healing me. If it's okay with you, let's spend the rest of our lives together.
Let me think about it for a day, I said and discussed it with my son.
I don't mind. Just decide based on whether you like him or not.
There were no objections, so I decided to marry Brandon. To be honest, I had feelings for him. I thought we were just drinking buddies, but being with him really was soothing. We both found comfort in each other, so living together seemed right. And hearing about his late wife, I realized how deeply he loved her. Every time I heard about her, I felt lucky to be loved by such a man. I even felt a bit jealous of his late wife. So, we became a married couple. Brandon treats my son as if he were his own, showing him great affection. Brandon, having no children from his previous marriage, gets along with my son so well that they seem like a real father and son. I am indeed as happy as I told Chris I was. Chris turned pale and trembled when he found out I had married Brandon. He never expected that the ex-wife he looked down upon as poor would end up marrying Brandon.
Dad, this man was making fun of Mom. Fire him.
Mike boldly told Brandon about Chris's behavior.
No, Mike, what are you talking about? We were just catching up.
Chris tried to cover up, but Brandon saw right through him.
You have a tendency to look down on others, even at work. I believe what Mike is saying. I've heard quite a few bad things about you from your subordinates. I'm going to initiate an investigation at the office, so be prepared.
Never did Chris imagine that Brandon would take Mike's words seriously and start investigating his misconduct at work. Chris frantically apologizes to Brandon.
I'm sorry. Maybe I was a bit harsh to your wife. Please, can you wait for the investigation?
Apologizing in a crowded shopping mall of all places. He must be really afraid of the internal investigation. But this act is practically an admission of guilt. Brandon is not listening to him at all.
No, I'll proceed with it. And I've heard the executive director you're close with has a bad reputation too. I'll investigate both of you thoroughly.
Hearing this, Chris's wife also apologizes.
Please, not my father. Just investigate him if you must.
The two then started arguing right there.
What do you mean by that? Are you abandoning me? This is ridiculous.
Anyone can replace you. My father is more important.
They were making a scene. I didn't want to be associated with them, so we left the shop. Their selfish attitude would probably lead to their downfall. They got what they deserved. Brandon immediately formed a team the next day to thoroughly investigate Chris and the executive director. And the findings were shocking. There were numerous instances of harassment and verbal abuse, favoritism towards preferred employees, and even forcing clients to entertain them, which had been going on for years. It's disgraceful to use their position to coerce whining and dining. Such behavior is completely unacceptable, especially in modern times. Chris and the executive director were stripped of their positions and transferred to a regional branch. Chris likely knew it would come to this, hence a public apology at the mall. It indicated he was aware of his wrongdoing, which makes it even more malicious. They would probably never advance in their careers again. According to Brandon, they both eventually resigned from the company. Apparently, they were fearing retribution from those they had mistreated. But their troubles didn't end there. Both were sued by employees they had harassed. The two of them, disliked by most employees, lost the lawsuit with many testimonies against them. They ended up with huge debts from the substantial compensation claimed. Chris's wife, now in a financially strained family, blamed him, and their marriage deteriorated. They soon divorced. There were constant fights, and Chris lashed out at his wife, so it's likely she might sue him for compensation too. Seeing Chris's downfall really makes me believe that living an honest life is the best. I've been blessed with a child with Brandon. At 42, it's a high-risk pregnancy, but we welcomed a healthy baby, much to our relief. Mike is overjoyed to be a big brother, lovingly giving the baby formula every day. Brandon already talks about Mike joining him in the business in the future. Raising a child at our age is challenging, but looking at our baby's sleeping face makes all the worries disappear. I'm truly grateful for this blessing. I'll do my best as a mother, embracing each new day with this thought: